I think more than anything, human beings just want to be seen. Human beings just want to be seen, to know that they aren't floating on this rock, isolated in space, not to remembered by anyone. And that same thing is true inside grief, just the same as if you haven't lost anyone. You just want to feel a connection to other humans.
Hey, I'm Tanya Wilkinson, and this is Death on the Daily. What happens when grief arrives so early in a child's life that they grow up with no memories of their mother's voice? If they never had a single memory of being held by her? Now, our society might tell us that we move on, but the truth is that loss at such a young age can shape every relationship, every decision, every single part of who we become. And today on Death on the Daily, I am sitting down with Miranda Malone, a clinical therapist turned grief guide, hypnotherapist, dead mum girly, and founder of the Dead Mum Club. And Miranda lost her mum, Rosalie, when she was just 5 months old. She holds no memories of her, no moving images, no idea of what her voice sounded like. Just fragments, photos, and a grief that has lived not just in her mind, but in her entire nervous system. And we get into early and preverbal mother loss, high-functioning grief and what it costs us, how loss shapes the relationships that we choose, and the power of ritual. Plus, the permission slips that Miranda wants every griever to carry for life. And Miranda's work blends psychology, spirituality, ritual, and community to support, as she calls them, her grieve hers in integrating loss, not just getting over it. This is such a beautiful episode. So let's get into it. And if you like this episode, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Let's go. When a child loses a parent later in life, they have a whole archive of experiences and memories with them. For example, for me, I know my parents' voice. I know their laugh. I know all their little quirks, all the things that irritate me greatly about them, all of their favorite things. But when you lose a mother whilst you're still a baby, that grief is really, really different. And I think this is why our conversation is so important, Miranda. And I'd love for you to center us anywhere that you wish to in your grief journey as someone who tragically lost your mum, Rosalie, when you were just 5 months old.
Yeah, that type of loss when you're losing a parent, especially a mother to a daughter preverbally, that loss and that grief obviously is there for life, but it roots itself into the nervous system and into the body. And so I may not have the memories and the experience of what it means to be mothered by my mom, going shopping together, her putting me to bed at night. I was held by her, but I don't have any conscious memory of that. I've never seen a moving image of her. I've never heard her voice. She really is a story of what I know from other people and photos, and that's all. But that loss has lived in my nervous system, and that can look like, behavioral decisions, attachment behaviors, especially in romantic relationships, worth and worthiness, just always seeking externally, looking externally for where is mom. I always think of the Are You My Mother book. That's what I always think of when I think about my loss and the loss of other women as early as myself.
Wow. What really connected with me is, well, firstly, it's that full body experience and how it just lives in your nervous system, but also with the fact that you only know your mum through those stories and through those fragments as well, and how that then builds into your experience of grief. And so what was that like for you as you journeyed through life? In your childhood, for example, was grief and was your mum much spoken about? Did you really understand? How has your journey been through, I suppose, the different chapters of your life that's a very big question, to where you are now. But
Yeah.
how has that changed and evolved as you've gone through life?
I don't really remember my first conscious memories of not having a mom. If I had to guess, I wanna say it was around elementary school, like late elementary school, 9, 10, 11 years old perhaps, where I was in the Girl Scouts here in the States. I was a part of that, in my youth, and so that's a very mother-daughter bonding, centric program, and so when I was in that, I really noticed I'm different than everyone else in this room. And my dad is always very involved in activities and making sure that I had someone present, but I was very conscious of the fact that that's a father, not a mother. Um, I didn't really start to understand the depth of how it influenced me in my decision making, quite honestly, until I was probably in my, like, early 20s,
Wow.
like, grad school, just outside of my first tremendous heartbreak, which was, I was married and divorced very early. That's some lore that not a lot of people know. I was
Mhm.
married at 23, I was divorced by 25, and
Mm.
so, that's when I really started to understand and have a concept of like, "Hey, I think my mom dying when I was an infant influenced me in some way."
Wow.
And then I dove into my own therapy journey and my own healing, but you notice as a young child, I am different than other people in this room, but you're not really sure how or why. And it looked a lot like influencing, my friendship patterns, my decisions in friendships, all the way to achievement. A lot of early lost daughters can relate to becoming the high achiever. I was always Dean's List, high honors. I went and got a grad degree. I never wanted anyone to think I couldn't do anything just because my mom died. And that level of, high functioning overachievement can also, rattle a nervous system, over time, over decades.
Or that high functioning, and I think high functioning grievers is such a thing, but also as you shared with those unconscious, the reasons that you don't want people to think you couldn't do this without a mom. And as a therapist, how much do you see high functioning grief, for example, in your work, be it with other people who've been through
Mm,
similar situations and holding grief for a mum maybe that they lost really early on? And I suppose what's the impact, and how do we move through that? What does it
mm.
look like to get to a version of life where we can, I guess, be high functioning, but without, as you shared, it really impacting on our nervous system in negative ways?
Yeah, yeah. So I've exclusively worked with women whose moms have died probably for about 4 years now.
Mhm.
I've been a therapist for 10 years, and, I can tell you a majority of the women that I see not only suffered early loss, but are also, more often than not, high functioning entrepreneurs, high
Mhm.
achieving, um, kind of always doing so that they're not needing to feel. And, you know, that catches up to you. That, as I said, rattles your nervous system. And what people I think miss, and I know Angela Schellenberg, who's a early mother loss specialist, also spoke on this a couple weeks ago. But people are missing that the healing and the learning to live with the loss happens inside of relationships. You have to be in a dynamic with another person and another energy in another relationship in order to practice and heal and grow and change. You cannot do that exclusively individually. Some of that work can be done on your own and in your thinking patterns and thought reformation and internal narratives that you're telling yourself around your loss and worthiness, but you can't do that in an echo chamber of your own creation. You have
Mhm.
to be in tandem with someone to be able to volley, I'm feeling this vulnerability. I'm feeling this thing when you say this thing or when you act this way. And that's why it's so important, the relationships that we do choose, and that we can fall victim to, narcissistic individuals and
Mm.
those who are there to prey on an empathetic person who more often than not grieving women of early loss of mom become. And so the most healing part is a combination of working in, a one-to-one container or, a coaching or a group, some sort of attention to the mother loss, specifically in the early mother loss, and also seeking restorative relationships, as best as you can, and wash, rinse, repeat for life.
Wow. I mean, what you shared there just showcases to that point around the containers for grief, the importance of those specific communities like the Dead Bum Club and everything that you've built and all of your events and obviously your work one-to-one with people. But I think as well that consideration of those relationships and who we're going into relationship with, how they serve us. I know from my own very different experience of grief, but I know how, to your point, actually around the empathy, I feel like I'm in the Grinch when the Grinch's heart just grows. I feel like grief is just not that I was a Grinch before,
Yeah.
but I feel like grief is, and I speak to a lot of grievers where it's like that compassion, that empathy just like grows and grows and grows. Suddenly you go out into the world and part of the world not looking the same is because your heart's grown, because you've really connected to that depth of that
Mm-hmm.
love.
Mm-hmm.
But I can really connect into the fact that there can be people out there who will manipulate, who will take advantage, who where actually you could get into some quite toxic situations.
Yeah.
And what would you say if, for example, someone is tuning into this and they are a griever and maybe they've been through mother loss and perhaps they're looking at their life and going, oh, I don't think things are right here. I feel like, yeah, I am high functioning, doing a lot of doing to get away from that feeling. But also, I don't know if my relationships are right, if they are serving me, if I can be myself, if I can be happy, if I can thrive in these relationships and be fully supported. What advice would you give to someone in that situation?
I can speak to this both in the clinical perspective and the very real lived experience of many narcissistic relationships, unfortunately. Um, what I use as a good touch point in my own choosing relationships, whether they be platonic or romantic at this point in my life, if I strip down my person of who I am as the 34-year-old woman standing in front of them, and I place I was an infant, so I'll place like 2 or 3-year-old toddler in front of them who's having a complete meltdown because of the emotional dysregulation that comes with the severe trauma of losing a peak attachment figure, a mother, a father. If I place that grieving child in front of this person, can they hold that? Will they be able to sit there with that child? Will they be able to nurture and stand alongside and look at the grief together as a pair instead of facing that child and saying, "What's wrong with you? Why are you acting this way?" And that's not to say that's an excuse for the 34-year-old woman to act like a 2 or 3-year-old child in front of whomever they're seeking a relationship with. But that's a good gut intuitive checkpoint of, is this person a safe person that I can bear my grief to? Is this a person, a safe person that I can break down to and that will understand that my grief still impacts me 34 years later? I just cried the other day to someone like 2 or 3 days ago about, all the feelings of anxious attachment patterns that I had been through in my life and relational patterns that I've seen and healed from and that still get triggered from time to time. And I was just like, I am just so tired of having to feel this way and deal with this because my mom died 34 years ago. And this is my story. I'm here in it, and this is with me for life. And that person was able to hold that conversation and wasn't, quick to dismiss or cover or ignore or distract and avoid away from. They sat with it. And for me, that's a good indicator of, okay, this is a safe person that I can open up to, that I can tend to my grief with and alongside with, versus someone that might take advantage of me in like a narcissistic dynamic.
That's such a beautiful example of also the power of us as space holders and just how simple it is. And obviously with that acknowledgement as well of the difference and who do you truly, I love that intuitive read of like, who do you really feel safe with in all of this? Because as you shared, your frustration is valid 34 years later, 68 years later, 88 years later, it's still going to be valid, and there's still going to be that whole cocktail of things
Mhm.
that grief brings up, but also that power of someone who can just sit alongside you and just be and
Mhm.
be like, yeah, it's cool, let's cry, I
Yeah.
will meet you in that. I
Mhm.
think we really, really underestimate it. And also I think because there are some forms of loss that feel so tragic, and I feel like we've both been through two of the forms that almost takes people's breath away.
Mhm.
Someone's mum dying when they're literally 5 months old, someone's child dying feels like two of, there's other ones obviously, but those ones where almost society, it takes their breath away, but also then they kind of don't know what to do with us, so they want to it's almost like I don't know what to say because I can't really relate to this. This goes way away from what is quote unquote that natural order of life. And I mean, I feel like you already answered this, but what advice would you give to someone about how can you lean in with those friends who have lost, for example, a mum or a dad or any other parent caregiving figure in their life who is significant at a very, very young age? What advice would you give to someone who perhaps I'm putting myself, my particularly my old grief avoidant self
Yeah.
in here of there are people who I remember being like, well, she was a friend and she lost her dad when we were in our teens.
Mhm.
And I'm not going to talk about it years later. What advice would you give to someone about
Yeah.
how they could perhaps now show up in ways that they haven't done maybe for years?
Yeah. It can look really simple. I think human beings significantly overcomplicate it due to our own, especially in Western civilization, avoidance and fear of death and grief and
Yes.
dying. And
Oh, yeah.
so they're like, "Oh, no, I don't wanna open that door because then I don't know if I can close it." But it's our everyday reality as a griever. That's our there's not a day that goes by that I don't think about my mom, partly because of what I do, partly because I'm a mom now, and also mother loss just follows you for life. Um, but I think breaking it down really simplistically, ask about their person. Ask about their person's name. If you knew their person, share a memory organic to you, not placing any responsibility onto the griever, to just say, I was thinking about your mom and I remember when she did XYZ and I really love that about her. It could be as simple as that. In showing up years later, if you're especially close to someone or you wanna show up to people in your life who've lost someone, putting their loved one's, birthday or death date in your
Yeah.
calendar, remembering to I have a girlfriend who does this with her friend, and she, put it her friend put her mom's death date in her calendar as her dark day, and she'll text her on her dark day and make sure
Oh,
just to "Hey, I know today is a shitty day. Hey, I know today is the day that everything changed for you, and,
yeah.
you don't need to do anything, but just letting you know that I was thinking about it."
So
Can be super
simple.
simple, but I think more than anything, human beings just wanna be seen. Human beings just want to be seen, to know that they aren't floating on this rock, isolated in space, not remembered by anyone. Like, we just want community, we want connection, and that same thing is true inside grief, just the same as if you haven't lost anyone, you just want to feel a connection to other humans.
Yes. Yes, to that connection. And I think as well, we can take those if someone hasn't, for example, spoken about, if we haven't spoken about it to them, it's more that in
Mhm.
years. I've got a personal story. This again was before I went through my grief and woke up to the fact that death and grief are a part of life. I escaped the forever ever after, or whatever it is, happily ever after
Yeah.
conditioning that we are told. And I was stood on a tube platform in London, and this was with that friend from school. And this was, I was, must have been in my late 20s then. And I remember, so her dad died when we were in our teens. And I remember there was an advert, and it was about something about father. And it might have been a Father's Day ad. And I remember just watching her, and I noticed her eyes just lingered over the text. And I also then observed like just a little quiver in her, I can't remember if it was her eye or her lip. It was something that I suddenly went, oh, she's still feeling it. But me in my grief avoidant thing was like, oh, well, never mind. We won't talk about that. And I think even that, of sometimes when we're like really present with people, we can get more cues off of them. about how
Mhm.
they're feeling. So for me, it was 6 years later that I really thought about that memory again when I was mid-30s and grief finally found me. But I think as well, we can take our cues off of other people. And as you shared,
Mhm.
Miranda, like one of the simplest things is, yeah, how do you want to talk about them?
Mhm.
It might have
Mhm.
been a
Yeah.
while, but beautiful for you to share some memories of them, or if they have no memories, even being able to, I don't know what you think, but I would love if my friend could bring out photos or something like that, if there's
Mhm.
those fragments that they could share.
Yeah.
I would love to see that.
Yeah. For me, I love, because I didn't know my mom, very few people still living knew my mom. My
Yeah.
friends didn't know my mom, obviously, and so
Mhm.
for me, I love when, people ask me to share my favorite story I've heard about my mom. I like to talk about that. I like to talk, when I get asked, "What is your favorite thing about your mom?" Which again leads into stories I've heard of her. Or, what do you think your mom would think of this XYZ, whatever it is we're doing? It just I don't know her. I never knew her. I never will know her, at least not in this life. But it allows me the container to consider what it would be like if I did. And that, especially to an early loss, preverbal loss daughter, is so important and impactful. And she deserves to think about that the same way that a woman who had her mom for, 30, 40 years deserves to as well.
That's so, so beautiful. It's interesting actually because when I've had people on Death on the Daily in similar circumstances to you, and I'm thinking of a recent conversation, and he was talking about with those fragments. So his dad, he was like, he's like a rock star to me in my mind. And it was so cool because I got a little glimpse into that, the the world that he'd built of his dad in his mind, and it was so rich and
Mhm.
so, so detailed, and it was so beautiful. And to your point, it's around those, what have you been told? And then actually, I
Mhm.
feel like there's an intuitive sense. I don't know, you can tell me if you think there's like an intuition, but I feel like there's that connection that spiritually is woven.
1,000%. Yeah. I'd say a majority of the story I know of my mom comes from intuitive connection or mediumship connections that I've had with, psychic mediums or practitioners, messages that I've received. But I already intuitively kind of felt those things of my mom anyway. So it was just kind of like a checkpoint of like, yes, you're on the right track. And for me, I'd say, like, a majority of my youth when I was very young, like high school and under, I'd say, I thought of my mom in this like fairy tale sense of this whimsical, magical person, this person I could never live up to or could never match. And the older I've gotten, in 4 years' time, I will be twice as old as she ever was. And I'm only 30. That's crazy to think of. She was 19 when she died. And so now I kind of since I became a mom, I'd say, since I got pregnant when I was 30, I kind of felt the scale tip, and now I see my mom as more, a child that I'm carrying through life, that I'm holding her along beside me, um, in, this is how you lead life, this is how you mother, this is how you care for yourself, this is how you think about yourself in relationships, like, I'm the one that's leading the way now for her. I felt that way for quite some time now, so that was interesting to experience.
Wow, that's really, really interesting. And I think again, we really don't think as a society also about crossing that threshold. I'm sure when you turn 19, that was a big, big moment. I had Olivia Nunn on my podcast talking about with her mum who died, I think, when she was in her early 40s. And for Liv, it was coming up to that point, actually, there was obviously a big weight around that transitional moment when suddenly you become older than your mum your mum lived to. And but I would love to ask you actually a question based upon what you were saying about what would your mum think about this.
Yeah.
So to use your own words, where you say to other people, your mum died, you didn't, and your story isn't over. What do you think your mum would say about the story that you have created for yourself in your life where you are right now, Miranda, with the Dead Mom Club and everything that
Yeah.
you're doing?
I felt that I share it a lot on my content and in my community with my folks, my spiritual beliefs on soul planning and soul contracts and reincarnation. I very much have a deep felt sense that my mom and I pre-planned for her to die when she did, for me to lose her when she did, for her to leave a daughter when she did. It was all predetermined that we agreed upon that and signed that contract before we incarnated soul earth side. And so mostly what I feel is like, especially when I get creative sparks and I have ideas flowing for my business or what I want to create for the world, she's just like, yes, you got it. You're right on track. Like
Yes.
following the timeline, keep following the plot line. Like you're
Yes.
doing exactly the blueprint that we laid out for each other already and determined soul side. You're right on track and you're following it earth side now. And so every time I get a hit like that, she's just like, it's not so much a she's so proud of me, because I also hate when people say that.
Yes. They'll just
You
put
didn't
it
know her, so,
randomly.
like,
Yeah,
I
randomly.
hate that's, like, one of my pet peeves with people. Everyone has
Yeah.
their platitudes that they hate, but I hate that one.
Yeah.
So it's less of a she would be so proud of me and more of, like, a she sees, like, how on track I am. She's
Oh,
like, "Ah, yes, you reached the next checkpoint, like, let's keep going. You have more work to do. You have more, uh, things that you have to put out into the world to help people," and she's, like, with her little, like, to-do list checkbox, like, "Yep, okay, we got that one. Now next is this one." Um,
wow. I
that's
love
how I
that.
think she thinks of what I'm doing and all that I've created in her honor. And, I think
Wow.
she's also thinks it's really freaking cool that there's thousands of people, millions of people who, know her and know her story and, uh,
Yes.
talk to her and send love to her in the comments and DMs. Like, that's amazing. My mom is now immortalized to a sense for however long we're remembered, um, in a way that never would have happened had I not done this, had I not lost her.
Oh, that's so beautiful. And also I think because I remember someone saying this about astrology, that it's almost like a weather forecast, but you choose to do it or not. So to that point of, yes, Miranda, you are following this path and not,
Yeah,
okay, I'm gonna go work in corporate. I'm not gonna be a
yeah,
therapist.
yeah,
Like, I wanna go, I don't know, work in like the NBA or something.
yeah,
Actually, I love that. I love
yeah.
that perspective. And also around that immortalization, I think that's the power of storytelling because what did our ancestors do? It was pass the stories down around the campfire. And nowadays, I think because of the nature of social media, so much doesn't get passed on. But actually, what you're doing is no, 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 this is me, I'm storytelling. I'm bringing my mum into everything that I'm doing. I think that's so, so beautiful. And I do think a lot about wherever I go, whenever I travel the world, first thing I do is find the nearest I don't know about you, but I find the nearest graveyard.
I love looking at graveyards from
Yeah.
other places. Oh my gosh. Did I visit one when I was in London? I can't even recall. I think I
Oh,
did. I did. Yeah, it
I'm
was
gonna
part of the
take
church.
you.
That was the year where I was staying, but I when I went to Ireland, the April before this last
Yeah.
one, that was, like, immediately, where's the closest graveyard? I love, love, love going to graveyards.
I feel like that's the for us in the grief space, but I know when you next come to London, we're going to the Crossbones graveyard.
Please, that would be amazing. I would love that.
So I mean, it's the history of it is really sad. But yeah, it's absolutely brilliant. I feel like I've now got to give a little glimpse for anyone who's listening. Anyone in London, go to near London Bridge. There's a Crossbones graveyard. It's basically where the body is so sad. In post-medieval times, it's where the bodies of basically all the undesirables in society, so prostitutes,
Mm,
paupers, people who like basically anyone
yeah.
who was like,
Aren't
oh,
answered
like
for.
yeah, got chucked in there, and I think they were going to build the tube over it, and they basically just unearthed all these bones. We're like, what the hell is this? Then they found the
Wow.
history of it, and the locals were like, no, you
Well,
cannot. They've made it into like a beautiful community garden.
oh,
Um,
beautiful.
I often think that when I look at gravestones, because actually gravestones are that signifier for me of if you don't pass these stories on, the what's written on the gravestone, or for my daughter it's like a wooden plaque, so it's going to last for much less time than a gravestone would, but actually that eventually just decays and erodes back. So I think there's such power in that storytelling, and exactly as you're doing it of like, actually I'm going to bring my mum into this space. She deserves to be seen and heard.
All of our loved ones do, and
Yeah.
I have to attribute my dad to this. His name is Todd, and he's still living, thankfully.
Mm.
But he exposed me to all things spooky and haunted and witchy from a very early age. So he had me ghost hunting in cemeteries when I was like 9, like
Wow.
voice recorders, cameras, the whole 9 yards. And I've been obsessed. Halloween's my favorite holiday. I love all things spooky. That's been a part of my personality my whole life. And so, but there's been something so beautiful of just witnessing and honoring, the generations before us, hundreds of years of just connectedness. It's all intertwined. And also, 100 years from now, our ancestors might remember us, but 300 years from now, no one will be left to remember us. And that circles back to my belief system of just do whatever you want. I adopt a positive nihilism belief towards life. I'm in no rush to leave this life, but nothing matters. Nothing matters. Do what makes you happy. Follow what you're passionate about. Speak what you're passionate about. And we'll never go wrong in that, because at the end of the day, there's going to be a time in history where you're never going to be, nothing that you create or talk about is ever going to be remembered. That day will. So just do all of the things, do everything, do whatever.
I love that also because it makes us think. I often think this when I worked in Formula One, I used to think about this a lot of, it's not that deep. I'm going to be dead one day.
Not that deep. We all die in the end.
Yeah.
We're going to be dead one day. And also, we're going to not be remembered one day.
Yeah.
Further off, but still true.
Yeah. And they're definitely not going to remember this supposed massive F up that is actually not that big in the grand scheme of life. Don't sweat the small stuff. It's not.
But my soul will remember not being authentic to what I need to be.
Yes.
That's what leads me always. Does this soulfully, intuitively feel as though this is the direction I'm needing to be pulled into? If not, then I don't go. And sometimes I do just for the plot because it's fun. But I try to lead with that, because this all goes away. We all die. The physical eventually gets forgotten, but the soul is forever. That's timeless. That's limitless. It's forever. And we absorb every experience forever, and it's embodied into our consciousness of who we actually really are. So that's what always is leading me. That's what I think of.
Oh, I love that. And you got me thinking about how our modern culture is completely obsessed with that comfort, that ease, avoiding discomfort at all costs. But actually, what you've got me thinking about with that spiritual connection and that deepening into what's our soul purpose, when we numb ourselves, when we scroll, when we stay busy, when we avoid, do you think that our collective inability to sit with grief and to sit with that which is really, really painful, do you think that is impacting, I suppose, our spiritual connection as a society? And what do we lose when we will try to almost like take the pill and fix things as quickly as possible, or jump on social media for the dopamine hit and numb and avoid, rather than actually going into the sacredness of death, grief, these thresholds, and ultimately that deeper connection that it can bring us into our spiritual journey?
What don't we lose? We lose so much. Automatically, my brain went to this, just kind of pumps the brakes on the collective consciousness expansion. Like, as souls, we all chose to incarnate on this planet at this time in history, in these bodies, cultures, genders, you name it. But this specific group of souls and the younger generation, like Gen X and forward, really incarnated here purposefully for the collective evolution and expansion of consciousness and soul consciousness. We are moving rapidly into a direction of connectedness and inner knowing, spiritual knowing, more information that we've ever been exposed to ever in history. And that's all for a grander purpose. But when you are numbing out and avoiding and distracting and not somatically aware of how it shows up in your body and what to do with it, you're really just delaying your own ultimate gratification and the collective gratification. But the yin and yang, light and dark duality of everything, that also needs to happen too. The
Mhm.
delaying also has to happen too. The dismantling of infrastructure and systems as we know it also has to happen too,
Yeah.
so that the expansion on the other side can happen. So even in that, positive nihilism, if you're gonna numb out, if that's the track you wanna go,
Mhm.
do that. You just know that there's an answer to everything. There's an answer to that choice,
Yeah.
and you get to decide if that's the track you wanna go.
Yeah, and I think that also if we really connect it, I think that's where the severing of our connection to our body has been to suit that purpose of keeping us in that numbing, distracting, mindlessly spending money or whatever it is, because actually if we truly connect in, when I 'cause I think for all of us, we've all got toxic tendencies, and mine is still on social media or whatever it is, when I'm like, I need to be doing, to your point, somatic movement, doing things that reconnect me back into my body. But in the truth of it, I know conscious I can connect in quite quickly to, "This is really dysregulating me, this does not feel good for me right now, I know I need to go and tend to my grief." But there's many times where that side of me will either, or the high functioning side kicks in of, "What else can I do on my to-do list even on the weekend? What content can I be creating for my business?" And I think that lack of that body connection is also doing us that disservice of being like, "Actually, let's drop into our body, and where does that take us?" But I'd also really love to hear from you, because grief rituals, speaking of entryways into deepening that connection, whether it's to our body, whether it's, well, whether to our body or to our grief, it's whether it's to our body and our grief, because they come hand in hand.
Mhm,
And I know that grief rituals are a massive part of everything that you do, but also what you inspire people to do through your content. It feels to me like, I'm thinking of the coffee ritual. It feels like you built a bit of a movement there of people who are doing just the simplest of things to be able
mhm.
to just give themselves a moment with
Yeah,
their grief. So I'd love to hear a little bit from you about the role that rituals play both in your life as well as in general that should
mhm,
play for all of us, and
mhm.
why that's really important for us.
Yeah, I cannot take original credit for ordering coffee in my dead mom's name. I learned it on a retreat that I attended a few years back, and I don't know who originally came from, but, I was just the first, I guess, to talk about it as much as I do on social media, and it took off. People grabbed it, and I'm happy they did. Um, I order coffee multiple times a week, every week. It's a problem, and so it's something so simple to be able to order coffee in your loved one's name. It doesn't it could be your dad, your brother, your pet, your child, it doesn't matter, whatever, whomever you lost, but you're anticipating hearing your name, and so when you don't hear your name and you hear your loved one, externalized outside of your own mind, outside of your own grief, it's a
Mhm.
moment for you to connect to, "How does that feel in my body to hear another person unconnected to that person say their name?" Um,
Wonderful.
but also it reminds you that your person was a whole person. Your person was a whole person that may have ordered their own coffee at coffee shops once upon a time, that they had their own life and their own routine and actions, and it's such a small, easy, tangible way to be even briefly connected to your grief. Um,
Mhm.
I think that that's what's most important to any grief ritual that any person, adopts. I talk a lot about grief rituals because it's a way, especially for someone like myself who's gone their whole life without their person, to stay connected to their person. And it
Mm.
doesn't have to be in this curated, perfect, I have the candles and the tarot cards and the crystals, and I can only talk to them on the new moon. Like, no, I order coffee almost every day. That's a way I can stay connected to my mom. And
Yeah.
I feel more connected to her now than I did 10 years ago when I was doing the curated, I can only do it on these times in this very specific special way because that's the only way she'll hear me. That just simply isn't true. And it settles something in your nervous system. You just feel connected, and saying their name and keeping them a part of your life is a way to integrate the grief into your life to carry this person forward with you. I have not felt that she's missed any part of my life ever, because how could she possibly? She's mentioned almost every single day. I am carrying her forward with me in everything that I do, and I feel that. I feel that connection with her, and it's so simple. So, ordering coffee in her name, starting a notes app on your phone of things that you would want to send to your loved one, or, I've talked about creating a digital altar, like think Pinterest, but like grief altar in Pinterest or on your notes app. So many leaving voice messages for her as if you're sending her a text message or a voice message. So many different ways to connect with your loved one, and that you can, I call it microdosing your grief. Sprinkle it throughout your day instead of saving it for these big holidays, birthdays, death days. Of course, those are going to feel loud and heavy if you're only waiting to touch your grief on those days. Do it 365 in small, realistic ways.
Oh, I love that, microdosing your grief. Yes, yes, yes. Because we don't have to wait. And also I feel like sometimes when we wait, I find around the big days, actually, oftentimes I'm like, I can't be bothered doing anything. And it's those days where I just want to I'm in my creative flow and I'm like, I want to write a letter to my daughter and I want to plant it under some marigold seeds. And yeah, that will be a random Sunday, completely nondescript. There's no reason as to why. But I love that microdosing as well, because obviously for us in grief, it can feel really daunting to, I
Mhm.
think if we put it to those big dates, it would be like, okay, I've got to, the anticipation
Pressure.
of, yeah, it's their anniversary, it's their birthday. What am I going to do? Oh my
Yeah.
goodness, it's got to be massive. Actually, no, you can do these little things all the time. But also, I love when you shared that your mom hasn't missed anything because she's been there, she's been spoken about, she's been a part of everything that you've done. And I think
Mhm.
that that in itself is such a purposeful journey that we can all follow, of actually, yeah,
Yeah.
how can our loved ones be a part of our life? And it's really, really simple.
And most importantly, when I teach people grief rituals or have the conversations with people, I ask them to ask themselves this one simple thing: is this ritual restorative or is it performative?
Oof.
If I'm doing it for me and me only, for my grief and however it's gonna look or feel, because people have called me all kinds of things online for the things I do for my mom,
Yeah.
having her send me a birthday card, having her send me flowers, or
Oh,
her name. Like, people think I'm crazy for doing these things and ritualizing it. And 1, how can you tell me about my grief? 2,
exactly.
I genuinely don't care. It's in one ear and out the other. But thirdly, I'm doing it because it feels restorative for me, not performative for me.
Yes.
What matters? That's the most important thing you can ask yourself.
Oh, beautiful. It feels restorative for you. And I have one final question for you that feels like a beautiful ending for this. What permission slips do you want all of us grievers to know? I often, when I work with grievers, I often say, like, write out your permission slip. What do you need to be like? I give myself permission to, but if you could say to any griever, or it could even be giving yourself permission slips earlier in your life in your grief, what permission slips do you want grievers to be able to know and walk through this life with, even if our society doesn't give us them?
You have permission to grieve for the rest of your life, because it's going to be there for the rest of your life till the day you die. You have permission to engage in whatever grief ritual feels best for you, however silly or crazy it might look to someone else, doesn't matter. And you have permission, probably most importantly, can I cuss?
Yes, you can.
Not give a fuck about what anyone thinks about your grief.
Yeah.
Ever, 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 ever. If that's one thing that if I could bottle that and send that to anyone listening to this, or anyone that's ever worked with me or works inside my spaces, if I could teach people how to just not care, because you have this one beautiful life, at least in this soul and this body at this time, and you're going to waste it caring about someone else, especially a stranger on the internet. That permission slip to not give a fuck.
Yes.
Please, get anything from this, don't care.
Yes, yes, yes. Do it your way and don't give a fuck about what anybody else thinks. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. So, as we complete on this conversation, I would love you as well to share a little bit about where people can find you, about the spaces that you're creating, how they can work with you, anything that you want to in this, as well as anything that you're offering, because you've also got your brilliant merch that you've just launched. So, feel free to fire away with anything and everything that you want to.
Yeah, for sure. People can find me as Dead Mom Therapist on socials, mirandamalone.com. I have Hot Girls Grieve merch, really fun things, sweaters and t-shirts and hats and all of the things. And you can email me if you have questions, hello@mirandamalone.com. I host in-person events around the world throughout the year. I host virtual events often. You can find out about those on my socials. And I just have so many creative things in the pockets of my big, beautiful life that I'm building. And I'm excited to share all of the things. So, yeah.
Oh, that's so beautiful. I think that to your point around this, the story that we can create, I think you are an emblem of that, of, as you shared, that creative force that can come through in any ways. Doesn't mean you have to, if anyone listens, I mean, you have to go and become someone who's working in the grief space, but that there was a real creative force that I felt in my grief. And I just see it like it is oozing out of every single cell
Yeah.
in your body, is just properly vibrating with this creative force. It's always for me, it's such a joy to see just whatever you're launching into this world. I'm like, oh yeah, that's gonna definitely have, we didn't even have a chance. I feel like we're gonna have a part 2 at some point, talk about the disco energy. There's definitely got that disco ball energy to it.
Completely. Thank you very much for the compliments. I'm happy that comes through, because that's all I hope to embody. And I know that was my mom's plan for me all along. She gave me a little bit of her sparkle and sprinkle too. She's an Aries. Her birthday is March 21st. And I know she left this world very loudly and powerfully and traumatically, but she left that energy behind in me. And I'm carrying that forward. And I'm excited to see what we do in the next life together.
Wow, that imprint of sparkle is on you. And then obviously, as you shared that, we definitely hold similar beliefs. I definitely know on that continuation in that next life where we go in the spirals of all of our different souls journey. So, Miranda, I feel like there's got to be a part 2 at some point to dive into all of this. But in the meantime, I am so grateful to you for joining me today on Death on the Daily. I'll put all of your links in the show notes. But yeah, I just love your sparkle, and long may it continue.
Thank you so much, my friend.
Thank you for joining me on Death on the Daily. If you liked this episode, it would mean a lot if you could hit subscribe. Plus, head to the show notes to find out about my work as a grief coach, and there's a grief journaling freebie there for you. Until we meet here next time, take good care of yourself and others.
There's a cold fire, there's a crossfire, and there's some